We'll begin with an opening statement from Coach Neighbors, and then we'll take questions for the student athletes first.
Got a really fun team to coach. We've had an absolute wonderful time. We are experiencing everything that the Final Four and the city of Indianapolis has to offer. We're looking forward to games, but we are still soaking all of this in, and we couldn't be more happy to be representing our university and the state of Washington.
Coach, you've said Chantal thinks like a coach and she has that kind of mindset. I'm just curious, what does that kind of mean to you? Is that just about having a greater sense of just more than yourself on the court and knowing all the moving parts?
Yeah, I can rely on her to be out there on the front line doing it and experiencing it, and then being able to communicate it to me in a way that most kids can't. She can make suggestions. She doesn't just have she's got a plan behind it. She's not just saying it because she wants that to happen. You know, she'll say, get it to T, and then it's not just because T hadn't touched it, it's because she's got a mismatch. So having a player like that, especially around the basket, is tremendous. She's also our biggest communicator in transition defense, and she can really, really organize and gather our team on the floor when I can't be out there in those huddles that they have when I'm not in them.
Question right there.
Mike, Kelsey has always been a superior one-on-one player, especially taking people off the dribble. She's really improved this year as a distributor, not just compared to last season, but throughout this season. How have you developed that in her when you're busy, coaching, doing games, other stuff?
She talks about the amount of film that she and Coach Castro watch. It's really amazing how many times you see him in the film room, and she's bringing in ideas, something that she saw off her iPad. Seeing the angles and knowing that they're there, and then having that trust to deliver the ball. Early in her career, I was on her a lot to shoot it. And I thought we needed that, and we did need that to continue to build her where she's at. Now that teams double team her or they flood on her drives, there's 3 or 4 options, and now we do kick it because we've got those pieces that are confident. And I think as a result, that's obviously completed her game. She could have done that as a freshman and a sophomore. I just didn't let her. And if she passed it, I got mad at her. And that's on me, but I felt like we had to do that at that point in time to get her in that aggressive mode to drive it in there, because that does collapse the defense. And as a result, Talia's had her 2 best years, her junior and senior year. And obviously the shots that the other kids get are a result of her a lot of times.
The front row here.
Pat Eatonrob from the Associated Press. Mike, you're known as a movie buff. So What film would best describe your team, and what film would or have you shown your team that you think would inspire them?
I don't show them anything because I want them to kind of experience life on their own, but it's an easy one. There's a great movie called The Little Giants with Rick Moranis and Ed O'Neill. And, it's just you have to that one-time speech that they give in the locker room before they go out against his brother's team. It's got John Madden in it. It's a great one if y'all hadn't watched it. But it's a really underrated, inspirational movie. That'd be most like our team. They ask me for tips all the time, movie tips. They'll text me or email me. And I also have them at my house. They'll borrow them. But I don't make anybody watch anything.
Question over there.
Hey, Coach. Lakin Littman with USA Today Sports. The other day on the teleconference, you noted that you think that UConn's success, you've been able to use a little bit of their success as part of your formula to get here. Mm-hmm. And I wondered if you could kind of elaborate on that, maybe specifically say what part you used to get here.
Talking about their dominance, we were asked the question on that, do we think it's good or bad for the game? And I'm 100% behind the fact that it's great for our game. We should be celebrating it and not wasting any ink or airtime debating that it's bad for our game. What they are doing is incredibly hard. And what we use it for is how hard they work. I've been fortunate enough to be able to watch them practice a couple times, and it is absolutely incredible how much he gets out of that team and his staff get out of that team on a daily basis. Their attention to detail, their singular focus on what's important now, and we brought that back to our team. Our win motto is what's important now, and it's been a huge part of what we do, trying to win the next thing. And I think their culture just oozes hard work, and it's unacceptable. They police each other. They don't have to, as coaches, say anything. Those players are doing it. And if you walk into that program with anything less than your absolute best effort, it's a problem. And that's a great thing. And that's what we're starting to get in our program. And now with this next class coming in, we will have that. Now, obviously, getting the talent there with that is what he and they have done there over the period of time. And when you got some of the most talented kids working the hardest, they're pretty unbeatable.
Question right there.
Coach, just to bring you back, season opener, you beat Santa Clara 100-55. Going back to that game to now, what's the biggest difference between your team?
That what Talia alluded to it. At that point in time, we had a lot of great pieces, but we didn't have any idea what the puzzle looked like that we were trying to make. I really liked our pieces. We could move some things around, but man, at that point in time, it didn't look much like a puzzle. Now, we played great that night. I mean, you look back at it, we were ready to play because we'd had a good offseason. But at that point in time, we had no clue what this puzzle, was going to look like. And now I think we're just a couple of pieces away from being able to finish that thing. So,
Question from Richard.
Yeah, excuse me, Mike. Richard Deitch, Sports Illustrated. You, in terms of your what you were talking about with UConn before, how many of your fellow coaches you think subscribe to that same notion that you can use UConn as a pedestal to try to reach, as opposed to the counter, their dominance is not good for the game?
I hope not. I hope a lot of them do, because that gives us a chance. I hope there are people that are picking at it, because if they're focused on that, I don't think they're focused on the right things, and I don't think their programs will continue to be successful if they're trying to bring somebody else down. My pawpaw neighbors growing up always told me that if you got a candle and you light somebody else's, it doesn't make yours less bright. So I think any coach out there that's not using what they're doing, they're missing out on a huge opportunity, and it's going to hurt their program down the line at some point in time. So I hope there's a lot of them out there doing it, but I suspect there's not very many people that would disagree that what they're doing is great.
Question in the front here.
Creighton Raps from Hero Sports. Coach, you were going into tomorrow night's game with Syracuse. You're facing a defense that Notre Dame head coach Buffett McGraw calls one of the best that she's seen, and you have a three-point threat in Brianna Butler. What are some of the challenges on both sides of the ball preparing for Syracuse, even though you have faced them earlier this year?
Hard time is simulating it. We can't simulate that without our guys' practice team here. So for the last 4 days, I've had a group of kids that can't simulate their speed and their athleticism and them knowing what they're going to do. You would have to break down an exorbitant amount of film and spend a lot of time to try to predict and simulate what they do. So the challenge is adjusting in the game. And about the time you adjust, so does Q. He is a really good in-game coach. He does not get the credit in our game for his ability to manage a game, and I think he's one of the best at it. He's got some great assistants that sit over there beside him that understand the X's and O's, and he will adjust every time you make an adjustment and figure something out. He's got a counterpunch, and that's why they beat us down there at their place. He out-coached me.
Question over here on the right.
Perfect segue. Speaking of Q, I was interested in your response on the conference call this week about your relationship with him. I wouldn't have seen that coming. I was just curious, did you know him at all before, or is it strictly since the first game? And no. Besides the fact that you're both coaches of very good teams, what do you find bonds you have in common?
He was an assistant at Alabama back in the day when I was a young up-and-coming coach, and we were in similar gyms. I coached at Arkansas and Tulsa, and I was in the Midwest, so we were recruiting in some of the same areas. And I got a kick out of him initially because he's got a little flair and a little swagger about him, and I kind of wanted to know what it was like. So I sat up next to him a couple times and just really got to like him. He's a really, really good person, and if you don't take the time to get to know him, I think a lot of people have an opinion or a misconception just because he is going to carry a Louis Vuitton bag, or his glasses are sharp, or he's going to outdress me tomorrow, and there's no chance I'm going to win that, so I'm not even going to try. But he's somebody that has done it, I think, the right way. He paid his dues coming up as an assistant coach, as a high school as well. So we had some common themes and some common threads that I really admired and tried to emulate some of his things.
Question in the far back.
Coach, Charlie Cream from ESPNW. you do some things a little bit differently. You kind of have a unique style. Have you always sort of been this independent thinker, or is it something you've kind of developed picking from different pieces of your experience?
Was not. No, I was very not independent thinker. But I had a heart attack at 29, and it was an eye-opening moment that your life's really, really short. I started taking some inventory of some things I'd been doing those first 29 years. I found out I could read 40 words a minute as a college graduate. I was kind of embarrassed about that, so I started reading. And the more I've read, the more books I've come in contact with. It's just completely, and I started writing things out. I write down my philosophies and I share them with other people. And when you have to write it down, as you well know, people can then take issue with it. If you just think it, nobody can say. But when you write it down, people then take issue with it. I think that made me more independent. And the heart attack, all that stuff, I stopped worrying about what anybody thinks. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to write about it. I'm going to do what we're going to do. And hopefully they're the right things. But I'm just going to care about our kids. And then I think the rest of that stuff takes over. But it started with the heart attack and then has morphed into the reading and just sharing experiences with those people that write these books.
Question right here in the front.
Hi, Coach. Howard Mandel from Excel Sports. Forgive me if this has been asked, but it's two-part about Kelsey. One is just the evolution of her defense, and she was speaking to me about how you talked about her becoming a more complete player, and just what you've seen, if you was a moment where you felt like that sort of clicked for her. And then just the other part of it is that it seems like she brings so much evident joy to the court when she's playing. To what extent is that joy really powering a lot of what you guys are doing?
The evolution part, I think the USA basketball experiences have helped her immensely because when she gets with these other great players and her playing time sometimes is limited around them, and she knew that it was because of her defense a lot of times, and she wanted to get better at it. She guarded the other team's best player a lot of minutes this year until Lex came in our starting lineup. A lot of times she was the one drawing that assignment. It is a lot of film work. I mean, y'all all see her. That kid looks just like 90% of the other kids walking down the mall. Okay? If y'all saw her walking in the mall shopping, you wouldn't know she was Kelsey Plum. She's not 6 foot anything. She couldn't run from here to there faster than most people sitting here. She just looks like every kid else that's out there. But she has an incredible desire to win and work at it, not just to win, but she wants to do the work. She's that kid that's I use my papa neighbors all the time, and he comes back to me again right now. He always said everybody wants to be a rock star on stage, but nobody wants to practice in the garage. That kid wants to practice in the garage. She came to Washington. Y'all seen our practice facilities. We tried to keep her out of it. We were like, should we even show her the gym? But she doesn't care about that. She could care less. She's about people, and I think that's been a huge part of her, and that's why she is the person on the court that y'all all see talking and engaging. Somebody asked me, was watching one of our films against Kentucky, and they said that they counted, and we high-fived, back-slapped, or did something 976 times in that game. And you go back and you watch it, and it's every possession there's some of that going on. And it's everybody, but she certainly is a huge part of it as well.
Question right here.
Mike, you're really close with Kevin McGuff. He's here this week for the coaches convention. I was curious if you've talked to him, if he's given you any advice. He was on Muffet's staff when they won it back in 2001, I think.
Here.
Have you guys talked? Has he told you anything? Is he broken down film with you?
Not breaking down film, but a lot of advice. He's usually my first phone call on everything, period, not much less just Final Four. So, he's the smartest guy I know. So he gave me some great stuff and some really bullet point stuff that's really helped us this week. Then I talked to Coach Blair, who won a championship here as well. I worked for him for a few years. I picked Jeff Walls' brain. I tried to get anybody that would return a phone call to me that's been here. I certainly wanted to have their input. And Kevin is somebody I talk to every day. Sometimes not about basketball, but we still talk every day.
Time for one more question. Anything else? Sure, follow up.
Mike, forever kids on the West Coast felt like they had to go back east to win a title. We saw a lot of kids go to Tennessee as 3 Oregonians. Obviously, people have been going to UConn forever. To have 2 teams on the West Coast, and especially from the Northwest, What's that going to do for recruiting kids west of the Mississippi, really?
I think it lets everybody know that you can stay in the same time zone and compete. We've talked about it, but we've never been able to prove it. In the past, we've been selling vision, and we've been selling some what-if things, and quite frankly, it's hard to blame them. I get it. I mean, it's the number of people that have come up to me talking about Chantal Osahar this last week. That kid's been doing that for 3 years. Everybody on the West Coast knows it. It's not a shock, but I get it. It's hard to stay up and late. My family lives in this time zone. It's hard to talk to them. I get it. But now all of those kids out there are going to get a chance to see us and know that they can play in the same time zone, a direct flight home, an up and back, a drive. I think it's going to help us immensely. It already has, just the number of people that are answering phone calls and reaching out to us. And I'm sure Scott will say the same thing. But it's been something we talked about at Pac-12 meetings for a long time. We needed to focus on keeping these kids, building a league, and there were a lot of prongs to that. Scheduling better, being smarter in our scheduling, playing in the other time zones, being willing to do that, raising our profile and sticking together. We'd been fighting against each other, trying to catch Stanford. We got to knock Stanford off. Stanford's won this thing 18 out of 21 years, and when we started all kind of coming together and looking out for each other. Coach Vandiver sent a player to Cal, that she didn't have room for. And we get that a lot. Hey, this kid doesn't fit us. Maybe they do y'all. That's changed over the last 5 years. And I think as a result, our league has raised its profile, and now we've got some proof behind just standing up and talking about it.
Final question from Charlie there.
Coach, going to the matchup tomorrow night, you played them back in Vegas in November, and specifically Alexis Peterson. What you saw from her that night and subsequently what you've seen on video of her, maybe the differences in her as an individual player.
Yeah, she's really taken that team over and in control and leading it. Obviously, they've got a lot of weapons that they can hit you with, but you can tell she's in control. Q was talking about it last night, that's the kid that he wants the ball in her hands because she knows she's going to make the right decisions. I'll be honest, I had our kids poorly prepared in Vegas. You were at the game. You saw it. We weren't very good that day. They were really good. We had to really come back after being down 19 points to even make it a contest. I'd underestimated. I'd watched Alexis Peterson play in high school when I was coaching at Xavier. I underestimated. I didn't have our kids very well prepared for their intense pressure. I was not dismissive, but I was like, we're going to be fine. We've seen this. We weren't. So I'll have them a little bit better prepared, but they were very good. I think we've improved since then. I think they have too, and she deserves a lot of the credit for it. But I also think their group has really tightened up as well. You could see it in them. They're fun to watch, and when you get a team that's fun to watch, they're working hard and they're fun to coach.
Great. Thank you, Coach.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.